The moment I knew I had messed up wasn't when I walked into our apartment, heels clicking against the hardwood floor, still buzzing from overpriced cocktails and the kind of laughter that only feels that good when you know you're avoiding something. It wasn't even when I saw Ryan sitting on the couch, phone in his hand, his face completely blank as he looked up at me, that kind of expressionless stare that wasn't angry, wasn't sad, just nothing. The moment I knew I had screwed up was when I flopped onto the couch beside him, grinning, reaching for his hand, and he moved it away so casually that it almost didn't feel like rejection. Almost. I remember how my stomach twisted, how suddenly I felt way too sober, like my body had decided to catch up to the situation before my brain did. He wasn't looking at me, just scrolling, his thumb moving over the screen like I wasn't even there, like this was any other night, like nothing had happened, but I knew something had. "How was dinner?" I asked, keeping my voice light, like I wasn't completely aware of the shift in the air, like I hadn't spent the entire car ride home telling myself I'd made the right call, that I deserved a night out, that missing one stupid family dinner didn't mean anything. Ryan didn't look up, just let out a quiet breath through his nose, the kind that wasn't quite a sigh, but sat in the same neighborhood. "It was fine," he said, voice calm, controlled, so even that it put me on edge. I laughed, trying to play it off, shifting closer, reaching for his arm again, determined to erase whatever weird energy was happening right now, because this wasn't us. This wasn't how things went between us, because Ryan wasn't the type to do this. Ryan got annoyed, sure, but he talked about it. He said what was bothering him. He didn't just sit there acting like I wasn't in the room. "Come on," I nudged him, tilting my head. "Fine? That's all I get." He finally looked at me then, his eyes unreadable, cool, distant in a way that made me shift uncomfortably. "Yeah," he said, "fine is all you get." And there it was, the confirmation that I had done something wrong, that this was more than just a little irritation, that this was something else entirely. My mind scrambled, trying to piece together exactly what I had miscalculated, because I had known he'd be annoyed, sure, maybe even a little disappointed, but Ryan wasn't the dramatic type. He didn't do passive-aggressive bullshit. So why did it feel like I was sitting next to a stranger? "Okay, is there something you actually want to say?" I asked, sitting up straighter, arms crossing without me meaning them to, that defensive posture creeping in because I hated this. I hated feeling like I was in trouble, like I had to justify myself, like I hadn't just made a completely normal, reasonable decision to have a night out with my friends. Ryan's lips pressed together for a second, like he was holding something back, like he was thinking about what would be worth saying and what wouldn't, and that just made me more irritated. Finally, he set his phone down beside him, locking the screen with a tap, and leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped loosely together. "I don't care that you went out," he said, voice still maddeningly even. "I care that you lied about it." I blinked, my mouth opening slightly before I shut it again, because that wasn't what I had expected him to say, because that wasn't what I had done. "I didn't lie," I shot back immediately, shaking my head, stomach twisting again, but this time with something closer to frustration than guilt. I said I wasn't feeling up for dinner, which was true. I didn't feel up for sitting at a table making small talk all night. That doesn't mean I couldn't go out after. "You said you weren't feeling great," Ryan cut in, and his voice was still calm, still steady, but there was something else underneath it now, something sharper, something that made me pause. "And then you went out and got drunk with Olivia." I let out a scoff, rolling my eyes, because he was making it sound so much worse than it was, making it sound like I had done something underhanded, when all I had done was make a choice for myself. Jesus, Ryan, what is this, an interrogation? I didn't feel like sitting through another night of your mom asking when we're getting engaged and your brother making the same shitty jokes about my job, so yeah, I decided to do something else instead. Why is that such a big deal? Ryan exhaled through his nose again, shaking his head slightly, looking away like he was trying to hold back whatever he actually wanted to say, and that just irritated me more. "You do whatever you want," he said finally, voice quiet, resigned in a way that made my stomach twist again, in a way I didn't like at all. "You always do." Something about the way he said that, about the weight of those words, made me feel off balance, like I had stepped into a conversation that had been happening long before I even realized it started. "Oh, come on," I scoffed, waving a hand, shifting on the couch, trying to push away whatever weird feeling was creeping in. Don't make this into some big thing. I missed one dinner, Ryan. It's not the end of the world. He didn't say anything for a long moment, just sat there, staring at some spot on the floor, jaw tight, expression unreadable. Then, finally, he nodded once, standing up, grabbing his phone from the couch. Yeah, he said simply, heading toward the bedroom, not looking back. I guess it's not. And that should have been the moment I realized just how badly I had messed up. Should have been the moment I got up and followed him, apologized, told him I hadn't meant to make him feel like he didn't matter, like his family didn't matter. But instead, I sat there, arms still crossed, jaw still clenched, telling myself that he was the one overreacting, that he'd get over it, that this wasn't as deep as he was making it. I didn't know then that I had just changed something between us. I didn't know then that the next time his family had dinner, he wouldn't invite me. That the time after that, he wouldn't even tell me it was happening. That slowly, little by little, he was shutting a door, one I wouldn't even realize was closing until it had already locked behind me. The first time I realized I wasn't being invited anymore, I didn't take it seriously. Ryan mentioned over breakfast that he was going to his parents' house on Saturday, and I, still scrolling through my phone, just nodded and said, "Oh, what time?" The way he didn't answer right away should have tipped me off, but I wasn't paying attention. When I finally glanced up, he was stirring his coffee, focused on the way the spoon clinked against the mug like he had all the time in the world to answer. "I don't know yet," he said, still not looking at me. "Probably around 6. I waited a second, expecting him to say something else, maybe ask if I wanted to come, maybe tell me what I should bring, because that was usually how it went, but nothing. Just silence. It was so casual, so unremarkable, that it took me a full minute to process what was happening. I put my phone down and studied him, the way he was acting so normal, like we weren't both aware of what was different. "So, am I supposed to meet you there, or?" I let the sentence trail off on purpose, giving him a chance to correct himself, to tell me he had just forgotten to include me in the plans. Ryan finally looked up, his face unreadable, as if he hadn't just put a wall between us, without saying a single word about it. "I mean, you can come if you want." That was it. "No, you should come. No, they'd love to see you," just that, like it didn't matter one way or another. Something in my chest tightened, but I kept my expression neutral, refusing to let him see that he'd caught me off guard. "If I want," I repeated, tilting my head slightly, keeping my voice even though I could feel the irritation creeping in. I thought it was a given that I'd be going. Ryan exhaled quietly, setting his spoon down beside his mug before leaning back against the counter. "Look, last time you didn't want to go, so I figured I wouldn't push." He said it so simply, so logically, like it was just a natural conclusion to the events that had already unfolded. I scoffed, shaking my head because this was ridiculous. "So, what? I miss one dinner, and now I'm just not invited anymore?" Ryan's jaw tightened slightly, but his voice stayed calm, like he wasn't going to let himself get pulled into an argument. "It's not about missing one dinner, and you know it." I stared at him, waiting for him to explain, to give me the real reason, because whatever he thought this was about, I was sure it wasn't as deep as he was making it. But when he didn't continue, when he just stood there watching me like he was waiting for me to figure it out on my own, my patience snapped. "Jesus, Ryan, if you have something to say, just say it." His lips pressed together for a second before he crossed his arms, his shoulders tensing slightly, like he was bracing himself. "All right," he said, nodding once. "I just don't see the point in making you come to something you clearly don't care about. You didn't want to be there last time, and honestly, I don't think you ever really have." I felt my stomach twist, my hands curling into fists at my sides, even though I wasn't sure if I was more angry or caught off guard. "That's not fair." Ryan let out a short, humorless laugh, shaking his head. "Isn't it? You sit there at dinner, checking your phone every few minutes, barely saying anything unless someone talks to you first, and the second we leave, you start complaining about how long it was, or how you felt out of place, or how my mom asked too many questions. And honestly, that's fine. I'm not saying you have to love going. I'm not saying you have to be best friends with my family, but don't act surprised that I stopped forcing you to come when you've made it clear it's not something you enjoy." My jaw tightened because I hated how he was making it sound like I had been actively trying to distance myself from his family, when all I had ever done was try to be polite, try to get through the nights without feeling completely out of place. I never said I didn't want to be there, I argued, crossing my arms to match his stance. I stopped, exhaling sharply because I didn't know how to explain it, didn't know how to put into words that I wasn't trying to be difficult. I just never felt like I belonged. Ryan watched me for a second, his expression still unreadable, like he was waiting to see what I would say next, and when I didn't continue, he nodded slightly, like he had just confirmed something to himself. Look, you don't have to come. I'm not mad about it. I'm not trying to make a point. I just don't see the point in dragging you to something that you clearly don't care about. I hated how final he made it sound, like it was already decided, like I had lost some unspoken battle before I even realized there was a fight happening. But I do care, I insisted, even though I wasn't sure if that was entirely true, or if I just hated the idea of being shut out of something I had always assumed I was part of. Ryan gave me a long look, his head tilting slightly like he was weighing whether or not to say something. Then, finally, he spoke, and his voice was softer now, like he wasn't trying to argue anymore, just state a fact. Then you should have come that night. The words sat heavy in the air between us, and for the first time, I realized that maybe this wasn't just about that one dinner, that maybe it had never been about that at all. Maybe it was about all the little things before that, the moments I hadn't noticed, the ways I had pulled back without even realizing it. I wanted to argue, wanted to tell him he was being ridiculous, that missing one night didn't mean I didn't care, but for some reason, I couldn't bring myself to say the words. Because deep down, I knew that this wasn't just about the dinner. It was about the way he had been slowly shutting me out ever since, about the way I had let it happen without even trying to stop it. And now, for the first time, I wasn't sure if I could fix it. The next time Ryan went to his parents' house, he didn't mention it at all. No casual mention over breakfast, no question about what time I'd be ready, nothing. I only found out when I saw him getting dressed, pulling on one of his nicer shirts, something he never did unless it was for work or a family event. I sat on the bed, watching as he buttoned the cuffs, the whole process so routine for him that he didn't even seem to notice I was staring. For a second, I considered not saying anything, waiting to see if he would bring it up himself, but as he grabbed his watch from the nightstand, I forced the words out before I could second-guess it. Are you going to your parents? Ryan didn't even pause, just nodded as he fastened the band around his wrist. Yeah. That was it. Just yeah, like it wasn't even a question, like he wasn't aware that this was different, that I wasn't part of the plan anymore. I swallowed, shifting slightly, trying to keep my voice even though I could already feel my irritation rising. And you weren't going to tell me? Ryan finally looked at me, his expression neutral, unreadable in that way that had started happening more and more lately, like he had already made up his mind about something and didn't feel the need to explain it. I didn't think I needed to. I stared at him, waiting for him to follow that up with something, anything that would make it sound less like he was intentionally shutting me out, but nothing came. He just turned back toward the mirror, adjusting his collar like this was just another Saturday, like this conversation wasn't happening. My stomach twisted, my hands pressing into the comforter as I forced myself to stay calm, to not let my voice rise even though I wanted to shake him, wanted to make him react in some way. So that's just it now? You go, I stay home? That's how it works. Ryan exhaled through his nose, not quite a sigh, but close, and that just pissed me off more. I already told you, he said, voice steady, patient in a way that felt condescending. I'm not going to force you to come to something you don't care about. I clenched my jaw, barely resisting the urge to roll my eyes, because he was doing it again, making it sound like I had been actively trying to avoid his family, like I had spent our whole relationship making excuses not to be involved when all I had done was miss one dinner. You're acting like I've never gone before, I shot back, pushing myself up, so I wasn't just sitting there like some abandoned afterthought. I went to every single one for the past 2 years, and suddenly I miss one night, and now I'm cut off. How does that make sense? Ryan turned back to face me fully now, arms crossing, his jaw tightening slightly in a way that told me he was trying not to get annoyed, and that just made me want to push harder. It's not about one night, he said, and I hated how calm he sounded, like he had already played this conversation out in his head before it even started. You act like you're doing me some huge favor by showing up like it's some kind of chore, and I don't want you there out of obligation. I want you there because you want to be there. And if you don't, then what's the point? I let out a short, humorless laugh, shaking my head because this was so ridiculous, because I didn't understand how he was twisting this into something bigger than it was. Oh my God, Ryan, do you even hear yourself? Do you want to go to every single work event you get invited to? Do you want to sit through every boring dinner with my friends? No, but you go because that's what you do when you're in a relationship. You show up for each other even when it's not your favorite thing in the world. So why is this suddenly some huge issue? Ryan didn't respond right away, just watched me, his expression unreadable again, like he was waiting for me to figure something out on my own. Then, finally, he spoke, and his voice was quieter now, steadier in a way that somehow made it worse. Because it's my family. I felt my stomach drop slightly at the way he said it, not loud, not angry, just firm, final. Like I had missed something important, like I had been looking at this all wrong, and now that realization was sinking in whether I wanted it to or not. What's that supposed to mean? I asked, but my voice wasn't as sharp now, because I was starting to understand what he was really saying, even if I didn't want to admit it. Ryan ran a hand through his hair, exhaling slowly before meeting my eyes again. It means you can complain about my work events, you can skip out on my friends if you're not in the mood, but when it comes to my family, that's different. You don't have to love them, you don't have to be best friends with my mom, but I need to know that they matter to you. And I don't think they do. I opened my mouth to argue, to tell him he was wrong, but for some reason, the words wouldn't come. Because I knew deep down that maybe he wasn't wrong. Maybe I had been looking at it like an obligation, like something I had to do to keep the peace rather than something I wanted to do. But that wasn't the same thing as not caring, was it? That didn't mean I deserved to be shut out entirely. Ryan watched me, waiting, but when I still didn't say anything, he just nodded slightly, like that confirmed whatever he had been thinking. I have to go, he said simply, grabbing his keys from the dresser. I'll be back later. I didn't say anything as he walked out, didn't try to stop him, didn't demand that he invite me, because I wasn't sure if I even wanted to go anymore. Because for the first time, it didn't feel like it was my choice. It felt like he had already decided for me. Ryan didn't text me while he was at dinner, and I didn't text him either. I kept telling myself I didn't care, that it wasn't a big deal, that I was fine spending the evening alone, but I checked my phone more times than I wanted to admit. At first, I tried to distract myself, put on a show, scrolled through social media, but everything just annoyed me. I kept picturing Ryan at the dinner table, sitting between his dad and his brother, listening to whatever stories his mom was telling, laughing at some inside joke I had never fully understood. I wondered if they asked about me, if he told them I was busy, or if he just let them assume I wasn't coming anymore. The thought of them shrugging off my absence, acting like I had never really mattered, made something burn in my chest, but I told myself I didn't care. When Ryan finally came home, it was late, and I was still awake, sitting on the couch, pretending to be focused on my phone even though I had barely been paying attention to anything on the screen. He walked in, set his keys on the counter, and I waited a few seconds, expecting him to say something, but he just headed straight for the bedroom like I wasn't even there. I clenched my jaw, trying to ignore the irritation bubbling up, but the longer I sat there, the more it ate at me. I could already hear him moving around in the bedroom, getting ready for bed like everything was completely normal, like we hadn't just spent the whole evening on separate sides of something I still didn't fully understand. I stood up and followed him before I could overthink it, stepping into the doorway just as he was taking off his watch. So, how was dinner? Ryan glanced at me in the mirror, but didn't turn around.
Fine.
That was it. Just fine, like he wasn't even going to give me the satisfaction of a real answer, like he had already decided I didn't deserve to know more than that. I crossed my arms, shifting my weight slightly, trying to keep my voice even though I could feel the irritation creeping in. That's all you're gonna say? He finally turned to face me, his expression unreadable in that way that had started happening more and more lately, like he was already tired of the conversation before it had even really started. What do you want me to say? I scoffed, shaking my head because this was ridiculous, because I didn't understand how we had even gotten to this point. I don't know. Maybe something other than one-word answers? Maybe actually acknowledge that this is weird. Ryan's jaw tightened slightly, but his voice stayed calm. What's weird about it? I let out a short, humorless laugh, gesturing vaguely between us. Are you serious? The fact that you just went to a family dinner without me like it was completely normal. The fact that you didn't even ask if I wanted to come. The fact that you came home and acted like I don't exist. Ryan exhaled slowly, setting his watch down on the dresser before looking back at me. You didn't want to go. That's not the point, I snapped, my arms tightening around myself as I stared at him, waiting for some kind of reaction, some kind of proof that he actually cared about any of this. You didn't even give me the option. Ryan shook his head, running a hand over his face like he was trying to stay patient. I'm not going to beg you to be involved in my family's life. If you wanted to come, you could have said something. My stomach twisted at how casually he said it, like I was the one who had pulled away first, like I had made some grand declaration that I didn't want to be part of his world anymore. That's not fair, and you know it, I shot back, stepping further into the room, refusing to let this conversation end here. I missed one dinner, Ryan. One. And now, what? I'm just automatically excluded from everything? That doesn't seem a little extreme to you. Ryan's expression didn't change, but there was something in his eyes now, something tired, something resigned. It wasn't just one dinner. I froze for half a second, my stomach twisting in a way I didn't like because the way he said it, the way he was looking at me, made me feel like I had missed something important. What the hell is that supposed to mean? Ryan exhaled, shaking his head slightly, like he wasn't sure how to explain it to me in a way I'd actually hear. You've been pulling away for months, he said, his voice quieter now, but somehow it felt heavier than when we were yelling. Every time we go, you barely talk, you check your phone the whole night, and the second we leave, you start complaining about how long it was, how you don't fit in, how you'd rather be anywhere else. And I get it, okay? I get that maybe you don't feel as close to them as I do. I get that maybe it's not your favorite thing in the world, but I can't keep pretending like it doesn't matter when it obviously does. My jaw tightened, my arms crossing tighter against my chest because I hated this, hated the way he was making it sound like I had been the one who started all of this, like I had been the one who wanted distance when that wasn't how it felt to me at all. So, your solution is to just leave me out completely? Ryan let out a short laugh, shaking his head like he couldn't believe we were even having this conversation. I'm not leaving you out. I'm giving you what you obviously wanted. Something sharp twisted in my chest, something I didn't want to name, something that felt dangerously close to guilt. But I couldn't let him be right about this, because if he was right, then that meant I had done this to myself. I never said I didn't want to be included. I argued, my voice sharper now, my heartbeat picking up in a way I didn't like. Ryan just looked at me for a long moment, his expression unreadable again, like he was waiting for me to understand something that he had already accepted a long time ago. You never had to. The words hit harder than I wanted them to, settling into my chest in a way that made my stomach feel like it was sinking. I opened my mouth to argue, to tell him he was wrong, that he was making this into something bigger than it was, but nothing came out. And for the first time since this whole thing started, I wasn't sure if I had any ground left to stand on. Ryan didn't try to continue the conversation after that. He just turned back to the dresser, pulling his shirt over his head like he hadn't just dropped something between us that neither of us knew how to pick up. I stood there, watching him, my arms still crossed tightly over my chest, my whole body tense because I didn't know what else to say. I wanted to argue, wanted to tell him he was wrong, that he was overreacting, that this whole thing was ridiculous, but for some reason I couldn't. Maybe it was the way he had said it, like it wasn't even a question anymore, like he had already decided that this was how things were, and nothing I said was going to change that. Maybe it was because, deep down, I knew there was truth in it, even if I didn't want to admit it. But I hated the way he was shutting me out, hated the way he had just accepted that I wasn't part of something without even giving me a chance to fix it. I took a breath, forcing my voice to stay, even though my heart was pounding. So what? That's just it? You just decide I don't care, and that's the end of it. Ryan didn't look at me, just grabbed a pair of sweatpants from the drawer before answering. I didn't decide anything. You did. My stomach twisted, my nails digging into my arms as I shook my head. That's not fair. Ryan let out a short breath, finally turning to face me again, his expression unreadable, his voice calm in a way that somehow made it worse. Isn't it? When was the last time you actually wanted to go? When was the last time you didn't make it obvious that you were counting the minutes until we could leave? You think they don't notice? You think my mom doesn't pick up on the way you barely talk to her, the way you brush off her questions like she's annoying you? You think my dad doesn't see the way you tense up whenever he tries to include you in a conversation? You think my brother doesn't notice the way you always sit on your phone instead of engaging? It's not just me, it's them, too. They stopped asking about you because they know you don't want to be there. I swallowed, my throat tightening, my arms dropping to my sides because I hadn't realized it was that obvious, hadn't realized they saw it, too. I had told myself I was just getting through it, that I was being polite, that it wasn't a big deal. But hearing it like this, laid out so plainly, made something sink inside me. I wanted to deny it, wanted to say he was exaggerating, but I knew I couldn't, not without lying, and Ryan would see right through it. But that didn't mean I had meant for it to turn into this, didn't mean I had wanted to be completely excluded, didn't mean I didn't care at all. I exhaled, shaking my head, my voice quieter now but still sharp. And you just let it happen? You just decided I didn't belong instead of talking to me about it. Ryan's jaw tightened slightly, his arms crossing now, mirroring my stance. I did talk to you about it. Every time we left, every time I asked if something was wrong, every time I tried to include you, and you shut it down, every time I told you that this mattered to me, and you brushed it off like I was being dramatic. I did talk to you. You just didn't listen. I felt my stomach twist again because I knew exactly what he was talking about, could remember the moments he meant, the times he had tried to get me to engage, the times he had asked if I was okay, the times he had hinted that this was important to him, and I had just shrugged it off, thinking he was making a big deal out of nothing. But I hadn't thought it was nothing, not really. I had just assumed it would always be there, that I would always be part of it, that missing one night wouldn't change anything, that my attitude toward it didn't mean I would be cut off completely. But now, standing here, watching the way Ryan was looking at me like he was tired of explaining something I should have already understood, I realized I had let myself believe that being present was enough, that just showing up meant I was included, even if I wasn't really trying. I took another breath, forcing myself to meet his eyes. So what now? You just keep going without me, and that's it. Ryan watched me for a second, his expression unreadable, before shaking his head slightly. I don't know. But I'm not going to force you to be part of something you don't want. I clenched my jaw, hating the way he was making it sound like this was my choice, like I had done this to myself, like he had nothing to do with the fact that we were standing here having this conversation in the first place. And you don't think shutting me out completely is making it worse? Ryan exhaled, rubbing a hand over his face before looking back at me. I think it's the only thing that makes sense at this point. Something about the finality of that hit me harder than I expected, like I had been waiting for him to give me some kind of opening, some kind of indication that I could fix this, that I could change something, but instead, he was just standing there, telling me that this was already done, that he had already made peace with it in a way I hadn't. I swallowed, my voice quieter now, the frustration still there, but mixed with something else I didn't want to name. I don't want this to be the thing that pushes us apart. Ryan watched me, his expression finally shifting, something in his eyes softening just slightly. But it wasn't enough. I don't either. But I don't think it's my call anymore. That was it. That was the moment I knew things had shifted in a way I couldn't undo, that I had spent too long thinking that just being there was enough, that I hadn't realized I was losing something until it was already gone. And I hated it. I hated that I had let it get to this point, hated that I hadn't seen it coming, hated that now, when I finally wanted to fix it, I wasn't sure if I even could. But Ryan was already turning away, already pulling back the covers, already getting into bed like this conversation was over, and maybe, for him, it was. I stood there for a second longer, waiting, hoping, but he didn't say anything else. So I turned and walked out of the room, back to the couch where I had been sitting before he got home, my phone still on the coffee table, still open to nothing. And for the first time, I realized I wasn't just waiting for him to invite me again. I was waiting to see if he still wanted me there at all.